Well, I was born hearing, and when I was 10 months old, that's when I became deaf. And the reason behind that was due to a virus, but as a result of that virus, that's how I became deaf. Whenever hearing people see me, they feel like they can't interact, but they should be able to interact with deaf people. I suppose it's all down to personal choice, whether or not they're confident enough to engage and converse with deaf people. And sometimes people are quite responsive whenever they see someone using sign language, and they may be eager to learn. Whenever I see hearing people, or I perceive hearing people, or how I perceive hearing people, I think sometimes, it's not fair. I think they're hearing and I'm deaf. Sometimes I do feel there's a bit of unfairness. But I think identities, there's some tiny differences, but we're ultimately the same. For example, I think when hearing people look at deaf people, they really see us as being different. But we're not, we're the same, we're all humans, so they shouldn't have that perception.
The experience of deaf children differs from hearing children in lots of ways. They come across a lot more barriers in lots of different things as well. Social barriers when they're meeting new friends, the places they can go out to socialise differ from those of hearing young people. Emotional barriers as well. But saying all these things and saying that they have lots of barriers, they also experience everything that hearing young people experience. And so they'll still be worried about getting spots, they'll still be worried about fancying somebody that they shouldn't fancy, or what do I do if I fancy somebody. So in a lot of ways they're just like every other young person. Things
we do in our everyday life which we take for granted and we do with such ease, like going to college, walking into a pub and ordering something, going into a restaurant and being able to order something, going to a hospital when you've had an accident, or emergency. Deaf people can't do those simple things as easy as what we can do as hearing people.
What does deafness mean to me? Obviously I'm more involved with deaf culture, the deaf way of things. I learned BSL, I can use sign-supported English, SSE. I can become involved in the deaf world, like getting involved in the deaf clubs, meeting up with deaf friends and using sign language to converse with them. And of course lip read as well, using different modes of communication. That's what deafness means to me.
I used to think that it was a purely physical thing. It was just a disability. I think as I've grown older, it's more just a cultural identity to me. It's just another set of people in life, really.
The deaf community has its own cultural meanings and belonging. And it's a very diverse community within itself. So, you can't really put deaf people into the same box. They've all got their own individual needs as well. You've got hard of hearing people, people who lose their hearing later on in life. And they're completely different in some ways to people who have been born deaf, who may use sign language as their first language all their life.
In terms of interacting with deaf people and hearing people, I prefer to be in the middle of both worlds. I have a lot of hearing friends, from the age of 12 onwards, and one of my friends I've known for ages, and they don't necessarily know sign language, but because they've known me, they make inquiries, they're interested in it. So I think once I'm familiar with somebody who doesn't know sign language, I can pick up things on what they're saying, on the lips or through intonation in the voice. So after a period of time of knowing that person, I feel more comfortable in understanding what they're saying. What do I think, or how do I perceive hearing people? I think the majority of the time it's good. I mean, it's fine, but sometimes deaf people aren't deaf aware. They don't really know the necessary or the appropriate responses. or sometimes they don't necessarily know how to treat deaf people. They may look away when they're speaking to you, but sometimes there may be a case of hearing people may feel arrogant, or they may feel more, they have more advantage. But I think it's important to realise that deaf and hearing people are equal. It's just a different way of living. Some things hearing people have and deaf people don't, but there's some things deaf people have that hearing people don't. It's just about working together, understanding how to work together and engaging in teamwork.
From teachers in the school and college environment, there's still a bit of, oh, you're deaf, don't worry, it'll be fine, you'll be on your benefits, which isn't what they want. They don't want to be on benefits, and they don't want to sit around saying, well, I'm deaf, so I can't do that, because they know they can, and essentially, inside them, they've got all the motivation and all the talent and all the drive that each one of us have, but it's getting rid of the label and getting the right support to let them access and explore what they want to do.
What I would like to do in the future, I think, I'd like to be known for one of the first deaf directors to go down in history for showing that they can achieve things. There's actually a gallery called Whitworth Gallery, which I go to, and I engage in some media studies there to gain some work experience for directing and filming and editing. What I would like to do in the future is look into joinery or carpentry, or looking into construction type work. Obviously, perhaps getting involved in helping the community or working with disabled people and supporting them, because I have a level of understanding. A lot of people think that deaf people can't do certain jobs, but I want to show them that we can do it. Deaf people can do anything, but it's important to gain that experience first.
If you look at the statistics, unemployment is a lot higher with deaf people. That process of looking for a job, getting on the career ladder, and applying for a job and contacting employees is sometimes difficult as a hearing person. So the deaf person with communication barriers and language barriers is going to find it 10 times as difficult.
For most hearing people, any problem they would have in this country with anything in their life, they can usually access information for themselves and improve the situation. And that, I believe, is a major difference.
And not all employers are deaf aware as well, and not all employers are willing to take on a deaf person. They're scared of what that might bring, what adaptations they might have to do, and things like that. So when it comes to education and employment, it's difficult.
There are some who are successful, and I think they stand as a real beacon to inspire other people in the deaf community. I do think, however, though, in recent years, I've noticed the deaf community is making itself heard more, and I think that's a perfect example of success.
So I think to ensure that there's a good future for deaf children, there needs to be continued support like this, so they have a forum where they feel safe to ask questions and ask for support where they need it, because the message we hear back from them is that they will ask questions here and ask for support with things that in a hearing environment they wouldn't, because they'd feel stupid. They'd feel like they were being labelled as stupid. But actually, it's just that the information isn't getting to them because they haven't got the right interpreter support, or it's just not part of our culture to be educated in that way. Just a bit of deaf awareness about what do you do when you meet a deaf person. 'Cause I remember the first time I met a deaf person and I was kind of, what do I do? And I didn't want to make them feel awkward by being patronising or doing something silly. So I think a lot of people not bother and ignore the fact than try and communicate with them.
I've been really lucky over the last year because I've done a lot of work with Manchester Deaf Centre, and particularly with the Deaf Crew, their youth group. I work for a charity called the Challenge Network, and everything we do is about trying to get different groups of people to meet each other, break down barriers between religions, between age groups, between ethnicities, between people with disabilities. And some of the most exciting work I've done has been with the youth group at Manchester Deaf Centre. last May, we went on a thing called the Yorkshire Free Peaks Challenge, where a group of 12 of our young people from the charity I work with and 12 of the young people from Manchester Deaf Crew completed a walk of about 20 miles and covering 3 big mountains in Yorkshire together. And it was such an interesting experience getting to work with them, getting to learn British Sign Language, just simple things like watch out, it's slippery, or watch out, it's steep. Things like that for me were really important. And just getting to know the group and just getting to see their jokes, to get my own deaf name. My own deaf name is because of my hair. And just having those little moments where I was able to actually learn much more about what they were interested in as people, helping to break down those barriers and getting the young people who I work with so excited about getting to know about British Sign Language and getting to understand deafness. That's what's important for me, getting people to know each other, because once people know each other, they understand each other better, and people lead much happier lives and you have a much happier society.
If I became hearing tomorrow, I think it would be really difficult for me. I think it would be hard to adjust. Being deaf, I get along relatively easily. I think what it would be beneficial if hearing people understood about deaf people, I think if they knew how to communicate with deaf people, looking at them directly so I could see clearly what they're saying on their lips, so I don't have to ask constantly for repetition. If I could become hearing tomorrow, I think I would. I think it would be like being a new person. I've never really heard sound before, so to become hearing, I think deaf people miss a lot of words or they miss out on information, and that may affect their acquisition of certain skills. I would understand more because as a hearing person I'd have access to that information instead of relying on someone. So I think it would be a smoother way of living.
I think hearing people can appreciate that although deaf people have this physical condition, they're still human like everyone else, and they can still feel and think the same as hearing people. And I think that's the first step towards deaf awareness for the hearing community.